Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Dario Health. Manage your blood glucose levels. Increase your possibilities. By Gvoke Hypopen, the first premixed auto-injector for very low blood sugar. And by Dexcom, keeping you in control with an integrated system for diabetes management.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Simms.
This week, Ask the D-Moms is back. Moira McCarthy joins me to answer your questions, including one about sending a teen with type 1 on an international trip for a month.
You can't go from constantly overseeing it for years and years and years to bang, letting them go on something like this. And that's why you've got to kind of poke at it. And it's not as much for them as it is for us, the parents, because we have to get past our own angst. And that's how you do it.
We also talk about a dad who's a first responder and sees the emergency side of diabetes, advice for young adults getting their first jobs, and Moira shares a story that stopped her in her tracks even after 24 years of her daughter's diabetes. In our innovation segment, a new glucagon option, and former guest Invincible Kids takes a big step forward. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Welcome to another week of the show. We aim to educate and inspire about diabetes with a focus on people who use insulin. My son was diagnosed with type 1 more than 14 years ago as a toddler. My husband lives with type 2. I don't have diabetes. I have a background in broadcasting, and that is how you get this podcast. If you are a careful, longtime listener, you have probably guessed that the teenager I was talking about in that tease there, the intro I do for every show, is Benny. Yeah, my son is set to go to Israel for a month this summer. It's part of a camp program. I've been sending him to this camp since he was 8 years old. At age 9, he started going for a month. It's not a diabetes camp, but I took advantage of having Moira on the show to ask her for some advice, because even though I let him go, I am nervous about this whole thing. COVID aside, this is a very, very big deal for me. He's super excited, and we'll talk about that in just a minute with Moira. A big thank you to JDRF Desert West. That's the chapter that now includes Nevada, Arizona, and New Mexico, I believe. They had me out for a talk. Well, they had me on Zoom. It's so easy to say they had me come by. I hope we get back to that soon. But I did this via Zoom. We had a great time. They have an ongoing event called Type 1 Talk, and they're bringing in authors. They have an author come in, talk about the book, read a little bit, answer questions. It was a great, fun time. I have to admit it was a little difficult to stay up because I know I'm such a baby, but it was on Pacific time. I'm on the East Coast, and I'm awake. We did it at, I believe it started at 8:30 my time, and we went to almost 10 o'clock. Ooh, but I'm not in bed, but I'm definitely in pajama mode usually by then, which made it even more fun because I think maybe I was a bit looser, it was more casual in a way than during office hours, but I really enjoyed that. And I got to say, the world's worst diabetes mom had an amazing February and March. The book came out at the end of 2019, but thank you so much if you are spreading the word or you've told friends about it. Something happened this year and it has sold more than definitely than I expected this year, but it's outselling some months right around launch. So I'm very excited and I am working on the idea for book 2. I'll keep you posted on that. But I'm always happy to talk to JDRF chapters, other groups, a mom group, just to sit and chat. Just let me know. Moira and D-Mom advice coming up in just a moment. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Dario Health. One of the things that makes diabetes management difficult for us, that really annoys me and Benny, isn't actually the big picture stuff. It's all the little tasks adding up. Are you sick of running out of strips? Do you need some direction or encouragement going forward with your diabetes management? Would visibility into your trends help you on your wellness journey? The Dario Diabetes Success Plan offers all of that and more. No more waiting in line at the pharmacy. No more searching online for answers. No more wondering about how you're doing with your blood sugar levels. Find out more. Go to mydario.com/diabetes-connections. My guest this week is my good friend and fellow D-Mom, Moira McCarthy. She is an author, a writer, an advocate, and so much more. Her daughter Lauren was diagnosed at age 6 in 1997. And I started the Ask the D-Mom segment a couple of years ago here on the show. We love getting questions from you. Moira and I, as you probably know, are very much aligned philosophically when it comes to diabetes, which kind of makes sense because I learned an awful lot from her. She's one of my mentors, and I'm so thankful that I had her blog, Despite Diabetes, and her books to guide me early on in Benny's journey. I mean, even before I met Moira, I've told this story many times before. I was a big fan. And when I finally got to meet her in 2015, we spoke on the same bill at JDRF St. Louis. I was so excited. I was kind of intimidated to be speaking on the same bill as she was. And that's really how our friendship, our in-person real friendship started. I bring that up because while we're aligned, as I say, we also had our kids diagnosed at very different times in diabetes tech availability or even what insulins were available at the time. So, 1997, when Lauren was diagnosed, was really different from almost a decade later, 2006, when Benny was diagnosed. I mean, you think about a kid diagnosed today when they leave the hospital quite often with an insulin pump and a Dexcom. Very different times. So I like that Moira and I kind of overlap in that way and have a bit of a different perspective just in our experiences. But some really good questions this time around. And as I said, I threw one in as well. Moira, welcome back. It's always great to talk to you. I feel like we do this seasonally. Did we talk last year during allergy season?
Probably. It's funny because when's the last time that we did a chat like this to share with everyone? It's been a hot minute, right?
Oh, it's been since last fall, probably before, maybe right around Halloween.
Yeah, I can't decide if time is passing really slowly or in the blink of an eye. I just don't even know anymore. But
I feel like, this year is flying by, and it's spring. Is it really spring by you? It's usually.
Oh God, no, it's horrible, but it's spring on the calendar, but that's okay.
Well, we had a bunch of really interesting questions this time around, and I thought of you. I was in a JDRF discussion. This is a really neat event I did with the chapter in Las Vegas and surrounding states. So it was a couple of states.
Great chapter. I've been there a few times.
Well, I hope to go in person one of these days. But it was like a book club discussion, which was really fun. So I read part of my book, and then we had a whole discussion. And I got a really interesting question from one of the moms who was there, and I wanted to run it by you. This mom says she's pretty laid back. Their son has type 1. I want to say he is 7, but he might be a little bit older, might be a tween. But the mom says she's pretty laid back, really wants her kid to thrive with type 1. But the father, her husband, is a firefighter. He's a first responder, and he sees, in his words, the worst of T1D. So he is very nervous that their son will have, an unhealthy, a bad outcome, all these words that he was using, and wants much more strict control and really wants to get this message across to their son that, you've got to take care of yourself, whereas the mom doesn't really want to expose their son to the kinds of things that this firefighter is seeing. If all of that makes sense, what do you think about that?
Well, so first of all, what they expose him to would very much depend on his age. And right. 7 and a tween are very different.
Right.
So we'll just speak more generally around it. Do our children need to understand the basics of type 1 diabetes and why they do what they do? Absolutely. Why would you, even a toddler, you must have done it with Benny, that when you're giving him the shot, you say, we're giving you this medicine so that now you can eat your food and it won't make you sick and things like that. And then as they get older, so you want them to understand it. But do you want to educate them in a fear factor kind of way? And to that, I would say no. Now, why is that? Well, that's because a number of reasons. First of all, children have very creative imaginations, and you can plant some really scary ideas in their head at a young age that may take forever for them to get out of their heads. Mm-hmm. Second, this gentleman, and thank you for his service, right, sees the worst because that's his job, right, to see the worst. If his job was to go visit everyone with diabetes every day, he probably wouldn't feel the way he felt. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so he's seeing these very rare, very frightening situations. So what I would say is, if there's any way that the mom and the dad can attend something together, whether it's virtual or in person, where they talk about the holistic approach to raising a child with diabetes. And you and I can talk about that a little bit right now for this mom and this dad. But as I've said to you many times, and as we all say to one another, we're not just raising controlled diabetes. We're raising a full human being. And it's very important that a child grow up secure, happy, feeling cared for, not afraid of what may be around the corner, while at the same time having a basic understanding of why they might need to do what they would do. So if this child is 7, I would say there's absolutely no reason under any circumstance to talk about what that father has seen ever to a 7-year-old. Yeah. If this child is a tween, 11, 12, I don't think it's the worst idea to maybe tell a story every once in a while, but I would also be careful of that because, again, you don't know if that person you're treating actually takes really good care of their diabetes and is just in a bad situation. You don't know as an EMT or a paramedic if there's an underlying illness that they may not know about and they'll find out at the hospital or something. So even though you're there, you don't know the whole history, and I would just be careful around that. One of the things I will say is I really do know thousands of families with someone who has type 1 diabetes in their family, and maybe 5 have had to call a paramedic who I know. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but it's also not a probability. It's way closer to never happening than it is to happening. And so based on that, I question whether you should build fear in a child to hope that they will take care of their diabetes. The other thing too is I know from raising my daughter, fear does not work in children. It's the same with everything, not just diabetes. They don't see down the road. They don't see danger. That part of them hasn't developed yet. I would say focus more on how he feels when he plays soccer or he plays the tuba or whatever it is he does, or he plays chess or he reads. How does he feel then? That's what I would focus on. It's got to be so hard for that dad, though, with what he's seen, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, the way I answered it was there was 2 parts to my answer. And the second part I credited to you, I promise, because it's pure Moira.
Oh, whatever.
But the first thing I said was we have to kind of understand that there are these issues of access, education, family support. And when, from my experience with this podcast, my audience, the people who, as you're listening now, you are a very different and wonderful and kind of lucky bunch of people because you are seeking out diabetes education. You now know where to get community support if you don't have family support. And I do surveys of my audience all the time where these people have plenty of support. They have community, they have friends, they have family, they have somebody to help them out. And I say all that because my guess, and it's a guess, and this is not a value state judgment, anything on people who call paramedics. We all need them when we need them. But my guess would be that the repeat people that this firefighter is seeing, if that's indeed the case, are probably people who do not have the support and the setup that his son have. So it's not a fair comparison, in my opinion, of what his son may experience. And again, we have no idea what he's really seeing, right? Is it type 2? Is it type 1? Does it really matter, right? Is this a father who may also see his son, even without diabetes, in every child that he takes care of?
I was thinking that, right? Every time you see a car accident, it must just be horrible.
Oh,
to have a diabetes diagnosis is very traumatic to the parent. And it took me a long time to be comfortable is a weird word, but to be comfortable with it, And if it's right in your face like that, the poor man. But I would also say that you can go out and find the worst case scenario anytime with anything and then dwell on that. Again, if it's put in your face every day, like this poor gentleman in his job, it's harder to look past, but he's going to have to find a way to differentiate his child's diabetes from what he does on the road every day. And I just hope that he can, because I can't imagine how difficult it is to see that and then think about your own child.
And the second part of what I told this mom to try, and this is one of the things you've pulled out of your bag, is write down what he is concerned about. And she should do the same. Anything she's concerned about her husband overreacting and what it might do to their son. And he should write down, I'm not overreacting. This is what I see. And then bring it to the endocrinologist or use the patient portal to talk to the endocrinologist without your child around, especially a 7-year-old. and see what the endo has to say. How many kids in your practice have called an ambulance 3 times in the last month, or, whatever he's really worried about? Or if this happens, does it mean that? Because we've talked about this. Most of us kind of make up stuff because we don't know and we're afraid to ask.
That's great advice.
Well, sure, you gave it to me.
But really, that is what I always did, is just sort of went to the endo and said, this is what I'm worried about now. And then they would tell me why I didn't need to be worried. You have to trust your medical team to do that. And this dad's probably going to have to think a little more than most of us have to because of what he's seen. And then I know adults with type 1 who, when they're super low, prefer to call EMTs and have them come to their house and treat them and then leave without going to the hospital. I don't get it, but I know people who say they'd much rather do that than use glucagon.
Well, I'll try to follow up with them. I'm in touch with the chapter, so we'll kind of circle around and see if we can find out what happened there. But that was a unique one. When I saw that, I thought, oh my goodness, I definitely wanted to ask about it. We got another question. Heather says, my son just started his first job. Congratulations. Should I have him give the employer a quick reference emergency form, or is that not necessary? Right back to our conversation in just a moment. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Gvoke. And almost everyone who takes insulin has experienced a low blood sugar. That can be scary. A very low blood sugar is really scary. And that's where Gvoke Hypopen comes in. It's the first auto-injector to treat very low blood sugar. Gvoke Hypopen is premixed and ready to go with no visible needle. That means it's easy to use. In usability studies, 99% of people were able to give Gvoke correctly. I am so glad to have it. Find out more, go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Gvoke logo. Gvoke shouldn't be used in patients with pheochromocytoma or insulinoma. Visit gvokeglucagon.com/risk. Now back to my conversation with Moira. The question is from a parent asking whether her child needs an emergency diabetes form at work. And this is a young adult. This isn't, a 14-year-old kid that she's driving to. Well, you say, of course. My son just got a job, so he's only 16. But
I consider 16 old enough. So I can think that if you are old enough to have a job, even if it's babysitting for people, you are old enough to make that decision yourself and speak for yourself. I think parents should advise their children about what they think might be a good idea. But at the end of the day, that's up to the kid in the work situation. What my daughter would do is just kind of nonchalantly when she started, she worked at a country club, catering, and in the pro shop, and then she was a bank teller. And what she did is after she started, just would you had meters then. Now I guess it would be your CGM. Just pull it out and say, oh, you guys, just so you know, I have type 1 diabetes. If you see me doing this, don't worry about it. If I need anything, I'll let you know. That's it.
That's funny because that's what happened to Benny. He just got a job as a grocery store clerk. He stocks shelves. Is that what it's called? He stocks shelves. He didn't make a big deal about diabetes. I don't think he even told them before he started. And then he was going a little bit on the low side, and he took out his pump where his CGM numbers are and said, hey, I'm going low. I have type 1. I just need to sit down for a minute. I'll keep you posted. I'll let you know if I need anything. And he said it was really easy. And of course, I was thinking to myself, the worst mom that I am, it didn't even occur to me to fill out a form or let them know. I mean, he does take care of it, and I'm lucky that way. But I'm curious, and I'm not as familiar with the ins and outs, I want to say legally, but with adults starting these jobs full time, things like that, are there ways that they should be disclosing or anything they should be saying, or do you think it really is just up to their comfort level? And I guess I'm just thinking about, American Diabetes Association guidelines, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it depends on the job. If you have a job that you're only allowed to, they give you a policy that says you may only eat and drink food during your break, and your break is 15 minutes at the same time every day, then you need to have a discussion with your boss and say, just so you know, I'm going to have a tube of glucose tabs in my pocket, and I may look at my CGM and pop one in my mouth, but this is why. And the rest of it, I think Lauren always felt that, if she was at work and she felt like she was going to throw up, she wouldn't have had a form filed in case she's ever sick. So she just sort of treated it that way. Now, as an adult working now, Lauren just goes about her day. The people she works with all know she has diabetes because they work with her, and it just sort of, in this job now, it actually was part of the interview process because she works in prescription drug pricing, so they know. But for a teenager, my opinion, I let Lauren make her choice and how she did it, and that's how she did it. I do think that the people you work for and you work with do need to know you have type 1 diabetes. They don't need to know what your basal is or, how to give a glucagon or anything like that, but they need to know.
Right.
Just for some weird reason, for whatever, they need to know. But I don't think you need to go deep into it unless it's a very unusual job that has really restricted. Then I know, like, for instance, cashiers in the front of supermarkets. By the way, Benny is not a shelf stalker. He is a manager of product traffic.
Oh, yes. I'll let him know.
Resume. But if you're a front cashier, in other words, that's one that you may have to say to your boss, hey, listen, I just need to keep a juice box here and something here. And if I feel low, I'll just eat. And if I need to stop, I'll buzz you, and let's just let the other staff know so they don't think I'm getting some special treatment or something like that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'll link up any kind of advice, legal stuff for people who really do, as you said, who have a job where they can't leave their post, that sort of thing. I assume people like that would probably know what to do at this point, but I'll link that up anyway, just for some good info there. And I'll tell Benny that it sounds like he got a promotion. He can tell me more about bananas and how much things are stocked and when they're stocked. It's been really fun. And the timing has been really good. Just as a quick aside, he really just started. And we let him because of the vaccines coming out, frankly. And so, when he got the job, we knew there was going to be a training period and he wasn't going to be in the store right away in North Carolina. It just worked out so wonderfully that they opened up to grocery store workers. So as soon as he got the job, he was able to get the vaccine. And, even though he's not on the store floor all the time, I am certainly much more comfortable. He has now had both. And
I would want that even if my kid didn't have diabetes, just because he goes to the supermarket,
Yeah. I'm thrilled and he's so happy. It's a nice thing, when your kid gets really their first job.
It's good for them to practice, too, how to be able to just sort of deal with diabetes on the run while they're working. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, I never had a problem with Lauren thinking, gee, I feel low, and popping a glucose tab into her mouth or taking a bite of something and not being like, I have to stop everything because I feel low. Some people do have to, and they'd have to deal with it differently. But for her, she knew she was going to land in a high pressure job where she's running around all the time. And certainly she has. So now she's glad that she most of the time can just go with the flow with it.
I'm just going to make sure he doesn't eat a lot of bananas and not let them know if he's low.
Just tell him to eat the whole banana. Don't take bites of one on the shelf.
Okay, so I actually have a question for you.
All right.
And this is because, as we're focusing here on Benny some more, this summer, COVID permitting, he is planning to go with his summer camp. This is the camp where he's gone every summer since he was 8 years old for a month. And at this age, they go for a month to Israel.
So awesome.
I know. I'm so excited for him.
I'm crossing my fingers for Benny.
Right? So again, COVID permitting, we have been talking to the group. This is not their first child with type 1 diabetes who will be going. He's pretty easygoing. But we are going back and forth on what would I like, what would they like. My biggest concerns that we are addressing, and I don't know the answer to, really is just about how much does he need to take with him every day. I don't, because they're on the move the entire time. Yeah. I don't know if there's like a home base where they'll have all the stuff or if he needs to take everything every day. But that's neither here nor there. My question is, for something like that, knowing that everybody does things differently, but would you have any kind of non-negotiables for a teenager traveling with a group abroad or somewhere far away for a whole month?
So when Lauren only went for 2 weeks, when she'd go to Israel either. She went to Washington, D.C., which was the first time she went really far away for 2 weeks, and there was no nurse or anything. We talked to the endocrinology team, and she came up with a plan that she felt she could be comfortable with, and the endocrinology team was okay with it. So I said, that's fine. And part of her plan was, there was no share then, but part of her plan was she did not have to report numbers to me through the day. And it worked out fine. I mean, I don't know what her blood sugars were when she was there, but I know she came home and had a great time. The thing that I could see, let's go to the extreme and then go backwards from there. So let's say your non-negotiable is you have to see his numbers on your phone all the time. We've talked about this before. You don't know what he's doing. You don't know what the temperature is. You don't know what he ate for breakfast that day. It's only going to get in the way of the experience if you want to manage, and I know you don't, but if you wanted to manage his diabetes remotely from America while he was there. It would be crazy for both of you. And he doesn't need that. So I would say that pick a time every day that would work for him that isn't too awful for you, like morning your time. But if there's a time that sort of works, maybe he could check in at that time every day. And if they're in the middle of something, you can just have a phrase that he sends you to say, super busy, everything's great, love you. Sure, I can talk tomorrow. You know what I mean? Or something like that, because that would just make you feel. The thing about this that I think is super good is his camp friends are going with him, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So he's in an environment where everybody already knows and supports everything he needs. So it's almost like you're taking the camp that you work so hard to help him be comfortable with, and he and the camp work so hard with, and just moving it to Israel for a month. And that makes it kind of extra good, right?
Definitely.
Everyone around him. If he was going alone and he hadn't met anyone and it was all new, maybe I'd have some other suggestions. But given that, and I think you can do it, Stacey, I think you can let him go. And you know what? This will be great practice for college.
Well, I will be calling you every day. We actually have one non-negotiable that we have always had for camp. And that is, and it is not actually up to him, it's up to the people with him. And that is, if he throws up more than once in 24 hours, I get a phone call.
Oh, absolutely. I wasn't even thinking of sickness. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
That's, but I know you were thinking about
with my kid without diabetes.
Oh, good point. I was always thinking that, we're really fortunate. I'm going to knock wood or something that, Benny doesn't get ketones very easily. Now I've just jinxed myself. Right? Good Lord. I'll say a Kenahura too. But I don't know why I said that. But to illustrate the point, that I've always felt that that's the biggest danger when I send him away to camp is dehydration, people not recognizing high blood sugars, having an issue like that. And I figured that's something to look out for. So that's my only non-negotiable. The other thing that he has asked, because I asked, he made the plan, Maura. He made the plan for this that we're proposing.
You, I know, grasshoppers.
Is he said he's probably going to forget stuff. If he's got a bag that he's got to be repacking every couple of days. So the call that you mentioned, that daily check-in, he wants it to just be a photo of his backpack.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And just say, hey, Mom, my stuff is here. And knowing that he has to text me about it every day. And I think we'll do it before he goes to bed because it is a 7-hour difference. And he first proposed, why don't we do it at breakfast every day? And I'm like, because it will not be breakfast time here.
That's right. You know what you might want to think about is how, and you can do this now, how can he scale back what he needs to carry every day when they go up? What can stay in his suitcase? Like if you could get a pen with some rapid acting insulin in it, then if his pump site goes bad, even if he's gone for the whole day, he doesn't need a site change and stuff like that, unless he really wants that.
No, that's a good point. I think he'd be into that.
Yeah, like minimize what he needs to carry during the day and then keep the other things there. And they may also, if they're staying in the same vehicle that's bringing them around to places, you may be able to have him tuck a little bag into like the trunk of the bus or whatever. Like ask the bus driver, can you just put this somewhere and have like a couple sites in it or something? If they use the same.
Yeah, we'll find out. All right, I will report back. I like that a lot, though.
Those are both reasonable things, and that's super cool that he's thinking ahead about and understands what he might, who doesn't forget things. I pull out of the driveway 3 times and pull back in. Oh, my sunglasses. Oh, my wallet.
This morning, I had to come back into my house. I was running a quick errand and I had forgotten one of the errands, had a package in the house to send back. So it happens all the time.
So I think something for people who are listening to think about, if you have a young child and you're thinking, oh, I'll never be able to do that. This is why, as they're growing, it's really good practice to give them age appropriate freedom, whether it's play in the backyard on the swing set while you're not out there, or ride their bike around the block with their friend at the appropriate age, I'm saying. And as you let these things happen, you work your way up to sending your kid to Israel. But do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You can't go from constantly overseeing it for years and years and years to bang, letting them go on something like this. And that's why you've got to kind of poke at it. And it's not as much for them as it is for us, the parents, because we have to get past our own angst. And that's how you do it. So you've done that. And now Benny's going to reap the rewards of your being willing to put aside your fear for him so many times over all these years. Yay, you.
Well, thank you, Moira. And I'm glad you said it that way, because one of the interesting statements that people make to me, and I know you get it too, is, well, wow, I could never do that because I would worry, as though I'm not, right? All kidding aside, the first couple of years I sent him to this camp, I would wake up at 4:00 in the morning the first week or two that he was there, and I would wake up thinking, that's it. This is the stupidest thing I ever did.
Right.
This is terrible. What was I thinking? And he's fine.
Right.
And so it's our fear, and it's still there. You've heard me kind of groaning over here about him going and making all these noises. I am nervous, but I know I have to let him go. So it really is about facing those fears, and little by little. I will never forget the first time I let him go play in the snow. That was terrifying.
Oh, God, everybody goes low in the snow. So the way I always say it, and I know some people think it's hokey, but I don't care. I'm a hokey person, so whatever, is, in my opinion, the most loving thing a parent can do is to set aside their own fears on behalf of their child's success and happiness.
Yeah.
Within reason. If Benny wanted to try lighting a barn on fire and running through it, I'd be like, check your blood sugar first. Just kidding. But you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
You just got to do it. And it feels really hard and it's scary, but when you start to get to the other side of it, it's wonderful, right? It's wonderful.
It is wonderful. It is. I know that sending him to this camp, and diabetes camp was great and helped him in different ways, but sending him to this camp, I think, has been the seminal experience of his childhood. It has given him a gift of independence, friends, confidence, troubleshooting. Crazy things have happened, and they don't necessarily call me because he manages it with the help of the people that are there.
And
it's been great.
Think of how much easier it would have been for you to just say, you can't do that. I know your sister went, but you can't because you have diabetes. And instead of him moving toward this independent, funny, awesome young adult who's going to thrive in life, he'd be not doing the things he wants to do because he never would have experienced knowing that he can. Right?
Yeah.
Good for you.
Oh, I'm only quiet because I'm very superstitious, Moira, and I know it's silly, but all right, we have to move on from saying nice things about Benny. I'm getting uncomfortable. So,
I have a friend whose daughter went to South Africa on an exchange program and had type 1 diabetes. And when she was there, very far away from her parents, she had to have her appendix out, and it was fine. Everything was fine. Her parents didn't get on a plane and fly. One of the adults who oversaw the thing stayed with her. The hospital knew type 1 diabetes. Everything was fine.
Wow. Okay. All right. I'm going to start wrapping us up here, Moira. But before I do, you posted something really interesting the other day, and I want to ask you about it. You spotted, well, I'll let you tell the story, but you spotted an adult who looked like she needed help with a low blood sugar. So tell me about what happened.
This is really strange. I've been swimming a lot, and I go to a deep water exercise class. And so in deep water exercise class, you're exercising, but you're kind of looking around. And this pool is huge at my club and way, way, way over the other side in the shallow end where they do physical therapy and little kids swimming lessons and stuff. Just out of the corner of my eye, I saw this woman, and it was like, she looks kind of wobbly and funny, And then I saw who I realized is the physical therapy instructor, go over and kind of take her by the shoulders and bring her and sit her down on the step in the pool in the water. And I thought, I don't know why. She just had a look. I thought she's having a low blood sugar. And then I saw the club manager come in with a can of juice, and she opened it up, stuck a straw in it, and they were handing it to her. And I thought, oh, that's what it is. It's a low blood sugar. But as I watched the woman struggling with it and clearly wishing that it wasn't happening. She wasn't showing that visibly. And some of it I may have just been projecting, but I watched it and I didn't go over to offer help because I was so far away. And I had a feeling that this woman just didn't want attention, but she needed attention. And what struck me as I watched it and thought about it was it's been 24 years since Lauren was diagnosed. My family's raised millions of dollars and we're not wealthy people. I do the ride every year. I used to do the walks. I speak at places. And sometimes you just feel like, Lauren seems like she's doing really well. Maybe I should move on. And I don't ever really feel that way, but just sometimes you're tired, And when I watched her, I thought, I have let myself forget that even though my daughter is down in Washington, D.C. with an incredible job, thriving career, thriving life, that's her reality. It's easy for me to forget that because it's not my body and it's not my mind and it's not my diabetes. But it was a stark reminder to me that I will never regret raising my daughter to be tough about this and just live her life and not let it stop her from what she's doing. But I need to remember that raising her to do that doesn't mean that it's easy, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel renewed. I feel like I can't stop. I have to keep trying because it doesn't go away. And I guess the way that I said it a long time ago that I'm remembering right now is my daughter's fine, but this is not okay. And I think watching that poor woman not wanting to be getting the attention, not wanting to be low, trying to get things going again, when in my head I'm like, no, you need protein now. There's a D-mom over here. There's another diabetes mom we found out in my exercise group, and she was 2 lanes over, and I'm like, Andrea, something's low over there. So,
you have peanut butter crackers in your bathing suit.
I think that watching it was sort of a gift to me because it reminded me to respect the disease and to keep doing everything I can to make it better for all those people like that woman and like my daughter and like Benny and like everybody else. Right?
Yeah.
I'm so glad you shared that. It's just, those reminders are so important along the way. As you said, Lauren is an adult. She's not at home. It's wild to think about. I still can't believe Benny is driving and 16. It's, we only got a couple more years before college. Whoa.
Yeah, Lauren's moving into her own apartment. She's lived with her old college roommate since she got out of college.
Oh, wow.
So next week, she will be living completely alone for the first time in her life, and she's very excited about it. So
that is exciting. Good for her. And I'm sure she'll have the juice and the crackers with protein.
You need a protein.
Standing by. Well, normally this is where we would say, where are you going? Where are you speaking? But we're getting there. Yeah. And later this year, perhaps. But I think it's still fun. I know everybody's sick of virtual, but I got to say, I love the connection. And I'm doing something really fun with my local chapter, which is now a couple of states, my local JDRF chapter. And that is later on in April. And I'll be posting about this on social. They're doing like a spirit week. It's a very clever, fun idea that every day is a little different. And I am hosting a big trivia game at the end of it, and I'm very excited. It's all going to be diabetes trivia, but nothing stodgy or boring. And I'm really excited to do this, and I hope I get to do it for more chapters.
That's a great idea. That'll be a lot of fun. Today I helped tape the upcoming virtual gala for my chapter in New England, which is now the Greater New England chapter. So I'll be speaking a little in that, but mostly that night will be about martinis from home and bidding medals and stuff like that. But don't
you have martini earrings, or did I make that up?
You made that up, but I may have had them and I don't remember either. You know me and my whimsical jewelry.
No, I know what it was. When we did last summer, we did Hollywood Squares for Friends for Life. And you had a martini, but you had...
Because I was acting like Joanne Worley, but it was actually water, just so you know.
Oh. That's right.
I don't usually have a martini at 9 a.m. Never before.
I was going to say it was the morning.
Never before 10:30.
See, I'm just a frustrated game show host. One of these days, maybe I'll get to do my dream career. I'll ditch it all and run away to do Card Sharks.
Well, I mean, if Dr. Oz can do Jeopardy, I don't see why you can't.
Don't get me started. Well, Maura, thank you so much. It's always so much fun to check in, and I appreciate you answering one of my questions this time around.
It's the first time I've ever answered a question for you, right? It's good to talk to you again, Stacey. We'll do it again soon.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Simms.
As always, I will link up Maura's blog and more information, how you can find her books and all of that good stuff. And I should mention here, we talked about camp a lot and how great non-diabetes camp can be for your kids. I am taping an episode. I hope to have it out next week, but if not, it'll be out the following week. I want to be quick on this because camp is coming up, or at least, camp registrations. If you're doing sleepaway camp, they may have already closed, but I want to talk about camp. So I'm working on an episode, a roundtable with parents who've sent their children, like I did, to non-diabetes sleepaway camp, and adults who went to non-diabetes sleepaway camp as kids. So we can get some best practices in and more of those non-negotiables, like I mentioned in my chat with Maura. And that should be out, like I said, I really hope next week, but if not, the week after that. All right, innovations coming up. We're going to talk about a new option for glucagon and a new step forward for some folks that we've talked to previously here on the show. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Dexcom. Dexcom has a diabetes management software called Clarity. Do you use this? For a very long time, longer than I'd like to admit, I thought it was something that just our endo could use. But, it's really helpful, and now I actually have it on my phone. You can use it on both the desktop or as an app. It's an easy way to keep track of the big picture. I find I use it when we're adjusting things, which I felt was nonstop there for a while. But at age 16, Benny is kind of leveling out on growth and changing basal rates, at least for now. And Clarity really helps us see longer-term trends. The overlay reports help put context to Benny's glucose levels and patterns. And when you share the reports with your care team, it's easy for them to get a great idea of what's going on and how they can better help. Managing diabetes is not easy, but I feel like we have one of the very best CGM systems working for us. Find out more. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Dexcom logo. In our innovations segment this week, the U.S. FDA has approved a new glucagon option. They have approved Zegalogue, I hope I'm saying that correctly, is an auto-injector and a pre-filled syringe. And it is pretty amazing that we went for so long, pretty much until a year or two ago, with one option, and now we have three. So Zegalogue joins Baqsimi, the nasal glucagon, and the Gvoke Hypopen, which is a sponsor of this program. You heard me talking about them earlier. Zegalogue will be available in the U.S. later this year in June for ages 6 and older. Diabetes Mine has a terrific article, as they always do, on Zegalogue with all the information, although not a pronunciation guide. Couldn't find that anywhere. But apparently they had initially thought to launch this as brand name Hypopal. But they dropped the name. My guess is that it was too close to Hypopen, the Gvoke Hypopen from Xeris. And, I wonder if not only marketing, but there were other concerns about that. This brand of glucagon is also being used, interestingly, for the investigative clinical studies with Beta Bionics. That's the iLet pump, the dual-chambered insulin glucagon pump from Ed Damiano that we have talked about for a very long time here. But this is the brand of glucagon that they have been using. That is not to say that they couldn't use another one. So the next time we talk to the iLet folks, and I've been working on that, we've been going back and forth on scheduling and the like, but we'll get it. And I will definitely ask them about this. It's also worth noting that Zealand, the company behind this, if I haven't mentioned them yet, that Zealand and Xeris, the Hypopen folks, are both studying a mini dose version. This would be small doses of glucagon where you're trending lower, you don't need the emergency. A lot of parents use this for stomach bugs, maybe adults too. I'm more plugged into the parenting side of things. I know insulin camps have done this, so mini glucagon is a popular off-label use. It's definitely not FDA approved, but these two companies are now already studying how they could launch a mini dose version, probably a couple of years away. Interesting to think about. I want to bring you up to date on another story we've been following. Last August, we talked to Bob Weisher from Invincible. This was a website, an app to help caregivers, to help schools, to help nurses and teachers And I guess what you'd call non-healthcare personnel, you know, the front desk secretary, that's who was in charge of Benny's diabetes for many times when we had no full-time school nurse at his elementary school, had to teach all these people how to better support their students. Bob was diagnosed with type 1 when he was 18 years old. He said he was totally unprepared to deal with everything. And he built Invincible, he says, to make it easier for kids to grow up with type 1. And he just launched a new app, and it is for teens. Invincible helps teens living with type 1 build independence and have fun doing it. I have not taken a look at this. I apologize. I will see if Benny will take a swing through it. But we put it in the Facebook group if you'd like to take a look. And I love what he's doing here. Teens are tough, man. I'm interested to see what the reaction is on this. What he does have on his side is that he has taken into consideration feedback, input, all that stuff from actual real teens. And you can see some of that and some of their feedback on the website. So this is not just somebody kind of coming into the community and thinking they know what to do. This is someone from within the community who has a lot of experience and has taken a lot of time to ask the right questions and to admit what they don't know. So I'm excited to see what happens with Invincible. And Bob, I wish you all the best. Hey, next week we are back to good news. I need your tell me something good stuff. Send it in to Stacey at diabetes-connections.com. Post it in the Facebook group or just DM me on social media. I'll be asking because I love to share your good news stories. Before I let you go, a couple of things to look forward to in the next couple of weeks. I mentioned the trivia I'm doing for the JDRF chapter here in Charlotte, or I guess it's now the Carolinas chapter. And I'm really excited to do that. I am just a frustrated game show host, as you know, if you've listened to some of the silly episodes we've done over the years. I love this. My college radio station group, which sounds a little weird, but we have been doing trivia once a month since the pandemic started, maybe since last March. It's a really tight-knit group. We have a reunion every year, and it's just so much fun. I am so bad at that trivia because it's all like 90s music. It wasn't a news radio station, although it did have news. It was a hot AC pop station, adult contemporary music, for those of you not up on the radio lingo. And I was there in the late 80s, early 90s. But it's just really fun. Anyway, long story short, I'm modeling my trivia over that good time I have with them every month. And it's going to be a lot of fun. It's not going to be scientific diabetes questions. So if you can join me for that, if you're in our local area, if you think that sounds fun and you'd like me to come to your chapter or group, I will be more than happy to do this for you, and we'll have a lot of fun. All right, thank you as always to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. Thank you for listening. I'll be back in just a couple of days with a classic episode, so I hope you can listen then. Until then, be kind to yourself.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Simms Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.